they called it a joke, a flying mistake. A plane so underpowered, so awkward, that even its own pilots nicknamed it the Widowmaker. But what no one realized was that this strange, clumsy machine would one day change the entire face of American air power. This is the story of a fighter the world laughed at until it rewrote the rulebook of war. In the early years of World War II, the skies were ruled by sleek, deadly aircraft, the German Messerschmitt Bf 109, the Japanese Zero, the British Spitfire, each one a symbol of speed, precision, and deadly grace. America, still recovering from the Great Depression and slow to enter the conflict, struggled to catch up. Its aircraft industry was strong but outdated, its fighters often slower, less maneuverable, and far less battle-tested. Then came a design that looked wrong. Too stubby, too heavy, too slow. It was the Bell P-39 Airacobra, a plane that promised innovation but delivered frustration. When it first took to the skies, it carried a revolutionary idea. Put the engine in the middle, not the front. That way, the nose could hold something extraordinary, a 37mm cannon capable of blowing a bomber apart with a single hit. It sounded brilliant on paper, but in the air, it was chaos. American pilots hated it. The Airacobra was fast at low altitude, but above 12,000 feet, its engine gasped for breath. It lacked the turbocharger that every high-altitude fighter needed to compete, the cockpit visibility was poor, and the plane's unusual balance made it twitchy during combat. And in an era where dogfights climbed into the clouds, that limitation was deadly. Newspapers mocked it, test pilots criticized it. Even the US Army Air Corps quietly began looking for ways to replace it. But fate and geography had other plans. When war exploded across Europe and Asia, America began supplying its allies through the Lend-Lease program. Among the nations desperate for aircraft was the Soviet Union. Struggling against the relentless German Luftwaffe on the Eastern Front, the US shipped thousands of planes across the Arctic route to Soviet pilots, and among them were crates full of unwanted Airacobras. In the US, the P-39 was considered a failure. In Russia, it became a legend. You see, the Soviet Union didn't fight its air battles high in the stratosphere. Their dogfights unfolded close to the ground over forests, rivers, and frozen fields where speed at low altitude mattered most. And there, the Airacobra's flaws vanished. Its mid-engine design gave it balance, its firepower tore through German bombers, and its armor protected Soviet pilots who fought mere meters above the snow. The very same plane that Americans dismissed as useless became the weapon of aces in the East. But that's not where this story ends. Because while the Airacobra earned unexpected glory in Soviet hands, something deeper was happening back in the United States. A quiet evolution in aircraft design sparked by the lessons this failure had taught. The engineers at Bell Aircraft, embarrassed by their first fighter's reputation, began experimenting. They studied the Airacobra's mistakes, its unstable center of gravity, its limited high-altitude performance, its poor climb rate, and from those flaws, they began crafting something new. Something faster, something the world had never seen before. This new aircraft would take the core idea of the Airacobra, the mid-engine layout, and push it to its extreme. It would carry a new, powerful engine, sleeker wings, radical aerodynamics, a machine that looked like it had fallen out of the future. But before that could happen, the world still had a war to fight. In 1942, the Airacobra was already being phased out in US service. Pilots flying in the Pacific struggled against the nimble Japanese Zero. They complained that the P-39 couldn't climb fast enough, couldn't dogfight well enough, couldn't survive long enough. Many were replaced by newer designs like the P-38 Lightning and P-47 Thunderbolt. And so the Airacobra quietly faded from American skies, seen as one of the worst fighters the US had ever built. Yet, half a world away, Soviet pilots were painting victory marks on their P-39 seconds, dozens, sometimes hundreds. Names like Alexander Pokrishkin and Grigory Rechkalov became household legends in the USSR, scoring more kills in the American failure than in any other aircraft they flew. They adored the plane's heavy nose gun, its solid feel, and its ability to take damage and keep flying. To them, the P-39 wasn't a joke, it was a survivor. And that irony, a plane despised in its homeland but beloved by foreign pilots, would quietly shape the next generation of American engineering. Because while the Airacobra was disappearing from headlines, its successor was already taking form inside Bell Aircraft's secret workshops. The engineers had learned something crucial: that innovation often fails before it succeeds. That mistakes, when studied carefully, become blueprints for greatness. The new plane would take everything the P-39 got wrong and fix it. It would become one of the most powerful symbols of the jet age, a leap forward in speed and technology, the Bell P-59 Airacobra, America's first jet fighter, but even that wasn't the end of the line. The story of the Airacobra wasn't just about a single plane. It was about how failure drives progress, how the mockery of one generation becomes the foundation for the triumph of the next. Every rivet, every design flaw, every crash and complaint was part of a larger story. The story of how America went from being behind the world's great air powers to leading them. And it all began with a fighter that everyone laughed at. When the P-39 Airacobra first arrived at Soviet airfields, it looked strange beside the rugged Soviet Yak and Leger fighters. The cockpit door opened sideways like a car. The nose sat unusually high, and the propeller was driven by a long shaft running beneath the pilot's feet. Many Soviet pilots didn't trust it at first. But when they took it into battle, everything changed. At low altitude, the P-39 moved like a brawler. Its engine, a 1,200 horsepower Allison V 1710, pulled hard through the dense air. Its weight gave it stability when firing that monstrous 37mm cannon. Soviet mechanics, toughened by years of brutal winters, modified the aircraft for their conditions, sealing panels, adjusting filters, reinforcing landing gear. Soon, the American mistake became a familiar sight roaring over the Eastern Front, and that 37mm cannon, it turned out to be perfect for the kind of fighting Soviet pilots faced. German Stukas and Heinkels flew low, bombing trenches, convoys, and bridges. A single round from the Airacobra's cannon could tear one apart. In the hands of pilots like Pokrishkin, the P-39, became a scalpel of precision and power. He scored nearly half of his 59 kills flying that plane, making him one of the top Allied aces of the entire war. The irony was almost poetic. The same plane that America rejected became a national treasure for an ally. In Soviet museums today, you'll still find Airacobras preserved in perfect condition, their faded US markings painted over with red stars. Meanwhile, back in America, Bell Aircraft engineers couldn't ignore what they were learning from reports on the Eastern Front. They studied Soviet feedback closely. Pilots loved the P-39's power at low altitude, its visibility, its ruggedness. They hated the lack of turbocharging. That one missing piece, the ability to maintain power at high altitude, had doomed the plane in Western service. So Bell began sketching out a new concept. Take the mid-engine layout, redesign the wings, and this time add a turbocharger powerful enough to climb above the clouds. The result was the P-63 King Cobra, a refined, muscular successor that looked like the Airacobra's older brother. It came too late to change the course of the war, but it proved one thing beyond doubt: the Airacobra's design had potential, even brilliance. But let's rewind for a moment. Because the story of the Airacobra wasn't just technical, it was human. Imagine being one of the first American pilots assigned to the P-39. You're told it's the future. You take off, feeling the engine roar behind your seat, something no American fighter had done before. The controls feel strange. The nose dips awkwardly when you fire the cannon, and when you climb, the engine wheezes like it's running out of air. You look over your shoulder and see the horizon rising faster than you expected. You're losing altitude, not gaining it. You land angry, confused, maybe even scared. You report that the plane can't survive in real combat, and your commanders listen. The plane is pulled from frontline service, written off as a failure. Now fast forward a year, you're reading intelligence reports. Soviet pilots flying that same failure are claiming dozens of kills. Their letters talk about how much they love the aircraft, how it saved them, how it gave them a chance to fight back against the Luftwaffe. You can't believe it. You hated that plane. But somehow, in their skies, it's performing miracles. That's when you realize The problem wasn't always the machine, it was where and how it was used. This truth reshaped how the US designed and deployed fighters afterward. No more one-size-fits-all thinking. Aircraft began to be specialized, some optimized for high-altitude interception, others for low-level ground attack. Every war zone demanded its own kind of air power. The Airacobra had taught the world that lesson at a steep cost. There's another part of this story that few people know. The Airacobra's unique engine placement gave it one surprising advantage: survivability. With the engine behind the pilot, the nose could absorb tremendous damage before catching fire. Soviet pilots often returned from battle with holes in their wings and fuselage, yet the plane held together. Mechanics patched them up, and they went back out the next day. That toughness built confidence, something every pilot needed to stay alive. And then there was the cannon. Most American fighters carried 50 caliber machine guns, deadly, yes, but designed for air-to-air duels. The Airacobra's cannon, however, was built to destroy. Its shells could punch through bombers, tanks, even light bunkers. Soviet pilots used it for both air combat and close support strafing convoys, destroying armored cars and clearing trenches. It was, in every sense, a multi-role weapon before that term even existed. As the war dragged on, Bell Aircraft's reputation recovered. The lessons from the P-39 directly influenced their next experiments. They improved aerodynamics, they rebalanced weight distribution, they studied jet propulsion long before most American firms dared. When the jet age arrived, Bell wasn't playing catch-up anymore, they were leading. That lineage eventually gave birth to the Bell X-1, the orange bullet-shaped rocket plane that broke the sound barrier in 1947 with Chuck Yeager at the controls. And yes, its design, the long nose, the central engine, the sleek, streamlined body all trace their DNA back to the humble P-39. The fighter once mocked by the world became the silent ancestor of supersonic flight. It's strange how history works that way. Failure in the moment feels final. But in engineering, failure is information. Every bad flight, every stall, every complaint scribbled in a pilot's notebook becomes a note in the blueprint of progress. The Airacobra was a disaster, but a necessary one. By the end of the war, more than 9,500 Airacobras had been built. Nearly half of them went to the Soviet Union. The rest served in smaller roles: training, reconnaissance, even photo mapping. None of them wore the glamorous reputation of a Mustang or a Spitfire. Yet quietly, behind the scenes, their story shaped the future of aviation. When American pilots looked back years later, many admitted something they'd never said during the war: that the Airacobra had taught them humility, that innovation isn't always clean or successful the first time, that the pursuit of perfection often begins with embarrassment. And that lesson carried forward from piston engines to jets, from jets to rockets. What makes the P-39 so fascinating isn't just its technology, but its symbolism. It reminds us that progress rarely looks heroic while it's happening. Sometimes it looks like failure. Sometimes it gets laughed at. And sometimes it flies into history under someone else's flag, proving everyone wrong. By the time the war ended, the Bell P-39 Airacobra was no longer front-page news. The skies over Europe had changed, filled with Mustangs, Thunderbolts, Spitfires, and Messerschmitts. Jet engines were emerging, and propellers were becoming relics of another era. But somewhere in a Soviet hangar, a group of mechanics stood around a battered P-39, its olive paint chipped, its red star fading. They ran their hands over the metal and smiled. That aircraft had survived more than any of them expected. It had fought through snow, flak, and fire. It had been mocked, doubted, and nearly forgotten, and yet it had delivered victory after victory. The Airacobra's story didn't end with the end of the war. It became a quiet symbol of transformation, a story whispered in engineering rooms and told by old pilots decades later. Bell Aircraft, once the company behind America's worst fighter, had learned its hardest lessons through humiliation. Those lessons would pave the runway to greatness. When Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier in the Bell X-1, reporters hailed it as a leap into the future. But behind that orange rocket plane was a lineage of trial and failure. The X-1's balance, its mid-engine configuration, its focus on aerodynamics, all were born from the P-39's DNA. The Airacobra didn't just fail, it evolved. History often remembers the winners, the Mustangs, the Spitfires, the jets that came after. But behind every icon is a graveyard of prototypes, mistakes, and experiments that made it possible. The P-39 was one of them. It carried the bruises that future planes avoided. It made the errors so others could soar. If you walk through an aviation museum today, you might find a P-39 tucked in the corner, its glass canopy clouded with age. People walk past it, eyes drawn to the shinier aircraft around it. But if you stop and look closely, you'll see something extraordinary. A fighter that dared to be different. A machine that refused to fit in. A design that, despite its flaws, dared to ask, what if we try something new? That question, that willingness to fail, is what changed everything. Think about what came after. The jet age, the supersonic age, the space race. Every breakthrough followed the same pattern. An idea that seemed impossible, mocked by many, believed by few, tested by the brave. The Airacobra's legacy isn't just mechanical, it's philosophical. It's a reminder that innovation never begins with applause. It begins with laughter, doubt, and long nights in hangars where engineers stare at blueprints, wondering if they've lost their minds. In the end, the Airacobra wasn't America's worst fighter. It was America's most misunderstood one. It taught its builders that no design is worthless if it teaches you something. It taught its pilots that courage means trusting what others reject. And it taught the world that progress isn't built on perfection, it's built on persistence. The Soviet pilots who flew it home from battle called it the little hero. They painted kill marks beneath the cockpit and treated it like a friend. Some even refused to switch to newer planes. To them, it wasn't just a tool, it was a survivor, a partner that had seen them through hell and brought them back alive. And maybe that's the perfect metaphor for the aircraft itself, a survivor, rejected by one nation, redeemed by another, mocked in headlines, celebrated in history. So when we talk about America's worst fighter, maybe we're really talking about something else entirely. Maybe we're talking about how greatness is born not from triumph, but from failure. Not from applause, but from the courage to keep building after everyone stops believing. Because every legend starts somewhere, even in the shadow of laughter. And sometimes, the plane that everyone laughs at is the one that teaches the world how to fly.